recognized that in order for me to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, first, the goal was money, and the money was to serve the family, legacy wealth, right? That was the excuse at the time. And then eventually I realized, no, I need to work on me. I need to put the oxygen mask on me before I could serve anyone else around me. My wife, my kids, my family, my clients. As I started to grow and my clients were benefiting from what I was doing and I was serving them, I would look back and go, I don't think we're happy here as a family. I'm putting all the work into my clients. And then I was like, oh, how does this work? Let me start here. When I say here, for those who are listening, I'm pointing to my chest, like me, and then I can help my wife, and then I can help my kids. And then it's just a ripple effect. And that's my everyday now, bro. Working on me first, and then my family, and then you, and then it grows.
And welcome to Flow Over Fear. I'm really excited to have you here today because today I'm talking to my GoBundance brother, Erik Cabral. He is a serial entrepreneur, a founder of the podcast media agency On Air Brands, which has been involved in the production of a host. You see what I did there? Of popular podcasts, including this one that you are listening to right now. Erik is also the host of his own and the co-host of a number of podcasts of his own, including Entrepreneur's Circle, where he provides some insights from his years of experience as an investor, an entrepreneur, and he interviews some of the most successful entrepreneurs out there. So check that out. Erik is also just a super all-around inspiring guy who I'm inspired by and has found his own success by helping others succeed, not just in the podcast and marketing space, but beyond in his other ventures as well. And we're going to talk about some of that today. Erik, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, brother. It's truly an honor, not just to be on your show, but also to know you, man. So you say I inspire you, you inspire me all the time too, man. So, but yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I mean, talked about it in that last sentence, just adding value. And I kind of added that to your bio because I feel like when I started on this path of podcasting and media ventures and brand building and all that kind of stuff, I mean, by its nature, it's frightening. And but one thing I found with the support that you gave was that it was just like, oh, you're going to handle all that hard stuff for me so that we can make it easier to get kind of started and deliver that message. And that was empowering. But and I want to kind of go back in time a little bit and talk about where you came from. But can you kind of touch on how you landed on that media platform? Like how you went from wanting to help people in the media space to start things like podcasts and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Adam. It wasn't by design. I wish I could say this was all thought out and I mapped it out and here's, I just started with the end in mind. After being in corporate for over 2 decades, I had to figure it out because, I came from what you would imagine anybody who's in corporate or left it. I came from an environment that was very a scarcity type of mindset. And the term abundant mindset didn't exist in my world. I didn't even know what that meant. But when I finally left and I left for real estate investing, which you would think, how the heck did that happen? Well, like a lot of us in real estate, we found the purple pill, Robert Kiyosaki. And when I read that, I started to go to local events and local meetups for real estate, started digging into bigger pockets and reaching out to thought leaders that were close to home. And what I started to recognize was they had this in common, most of them, this abundant type of I give with no expectation of receiving, which was foreign to me. And I was like, how do I serve them? I started to adopt this and I was like, how do I serve them? How do I give them something? Because I have no value in this real estate investing space. I don't know anything. So I said, hey, I just want to shadow you, Matt Faircloth. I want to find out what you're doing and learn from you as I do the drives with you and have coffee and just be a shadow. And I started to realize I can leverage what I've done for well over the 10,000 hours required to be an expert in something in terms of logos and branding and marketing and developing all that. So I would look at what they did. And as you can imagine, a lot of people in the real estate investing space are data-driven people. They're not creative typically. And that I can either invent something new or take what they have and refresh it and make it professional, because I was branding Fortune 500 companies. I was like, so let me apply the principles that I've learned over the years onto this. And that's what got it started. That's what started to roll through that community. And everybody's like, oh, Erik's the guy that can do your brand for you. And it wasn't podcasting. It wasn't personal branding or anything like that we do today. It was really just that, like, how do I elevate and shine up this, lack of a better, word turd, like, how do we make this better? Because everybody was doing the same brand, dude, like that red multiple houses, rooftops, and everyone's logo looked the same. And then I was like, no one's playing in this space. Let's do this. Have you thought about a deep purple? That's why Kiyosaki went purple, because finance typically we're green, we're this. So anyway, started to do that, and one thing would lead to the other, to the point where when I started to have these conversations, Adam, like folks like you in the hallways of these meetings, I'm like, man, I wish I was recording this, because then I want to listen back to it. Purely for selfish purposes. But then also when I realized that podcasting was something that I was enjoying through Bigger Pockets and other Rogan, I was like, man, why don't I just put this out there? Are you cool with that? And they would go, yeah. And they found value in it. And then the values started growing, and then people would listen to their episodes and they go, who's producing your show? I do. And can you do mine? And then that's where it all just took off.
That's awesome. Referral base is best form of marketing ever, right? I mean, if you could get that, I mean, it's a testimonial and a new lead just out of the same thing. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was fun. It's definitely been a fun ride since. It's always evolving. We're always figuring things out. Even with you, you allow us to play, and you're like, have at it. You're like, here's the keys. And we're like, so cool. That's some of the best relationships that we have with clients that are. They understand that, pivoting or modifying and tweaking along the way is part of the process of growing and flowing, so thank you for that, for supporting us too.
Oh my, yeah. Well, it feels like it's just, definitely them feelings mutual. I'm getting so much value from a medium that I never knew beforehand, but immediately fell in love with. And it made it so much easier just when you had someone on your side to help with that. And that's just the value of communities. And I love to kind of touch back on that scarcity moments you had, because you talked about the scarcity piece, and that's a big deal for everyone. And so you're in your W-2, you're working in branding for Fortune 500 companies. Is that right? What were you doing, and what was your mindset like back then?
Oof. Oh man. I was so on a tactical level, I was designing. Like one of my very first jobs was, my dream was to live in Manhattan and work in Manhattan, and I accomplished that dream in retail. So I would work at a retail company, Loman's. They don't exist anymore, but that was like the bargain basement discount for big brands. Like they could sell like not knockoffs, but Louis Vuitton, for like a fraction of the cost. And that was our brand. And I'll never forget the day when I did my first design, and it was a direct mailer that went to my mom. Got it, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, you did this!" I'm like, "Yay, mom, I made it!" But then when the second I made it was I was driving down the New Jersey Turnpike and saw my billboard on the Turnpike. That was crazy. Oh, wow. So I was like, "Wow, look at this! They pay me to do this. Right? It just comes easy to me."
Right.
So that was like the early stages of becoming, starting as a junior art director to an art director, and eventually a creative director in the largest pharma companies in the world. The number one and the number two, I would always bounce between the top 10. And what I was doing within the pharma industry was I was a part of the in-house creative agencies doing logos, branding, and marketing. No social media at the time. I'm an OG because we're talking 90s to early 2000s. And that was my strength. I just kept doing that over and over and over with no desire to climb the corporate ladder beyond being a creative director. I didn't want to manage teams. I didn't want to deal with people at that level. I just wanted to do my work until I got pushed. We were having a kid, and a mentor of mine, I'll call him a mentor. He was like, "It's time, dude. You need to take it to the next level." And I had so much fear of failure. I had so much fear of letting people down. What will they think of me if I don't make it?
Where did that come from, by the way? I'm curious to know, like, where that started.
I would say, and through no real fault of his own, my father, I love him dearly. But he grew up in an era where failure is not an option because they were putting a man on the moon. They were doing all sorts of things where, and just doing 20% of what I was capable of doing. I was playing safe because I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to disrupt anything. I just wanted to go have fun. I was drinking and smoking and partying and dancing and doing all the things that a single guy would do in Manhattan. But it wasn't really until I met my wife and things started to get serious. And I was, that personality guy, that Erik 1.0, the fun guy, who she had to warn me several times before our wedding, please don't drink until after the reception. What are you talking about? I didn't understand that until years later. She's like, and then whenever we look back on photos, brother, this is sad. I was the heaviest I ever was. At my wedding, typically it's the other way around, right? But because I had multiple bachelor parties, I was hanging out with my crew from college. Like we were drinking and smoking and partying and doing all the things, just sin your life away. And that wasn't good for me long. That was not sustainable, especially, dude, I'll tell you this one story. When we had Veronica, our first, who's 9 years old now, I'll never forget this. I don't want to get emotional, but my wife was just doing the thing, breastfeeding, being a mom for the first time. And I was still me. And I was downstairs with my dad and my father-in-law, and my brother-in-law, my friends. And we just bought this house and we were smoking a cigar and had a glass of whiskey. And my wife came down, just put Veronica to bed. And she's like, oh, phew. She's like, yeah, hand me a drink. And I'm plastered. And the baby starts crying. She says, can you just go up there and take care? I'm like, yeah, I got this. I go upstairs, dude. Not only do I reek of cigar smoke, but I'm sure it's probably like I took a shower in whiskey. And I'm holding the baby and I almost fall on top of her, just pass out. Wow. And I thought to myself, I gotta change.
Yeah. Was that transition moment for you? That was the moment?
It was one of them. It didn't happen right away. But
yeah. You're not alone on that, brother. I mean, I can tell you dozens of times where I told myself the same thing and was continuing down that path. And it's just, especially with kids, you look back and it makes you emotional. It makes you regret those kinds of times, but it also, weirdly, it sets the table for the person that you become later.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are willing to transform, I mean, it's hard to make that connection, but if you could like package up or talk about the moments where you were able to make that change or decide like, I've had enough. Like what was it, a moment in time, or did it happen gradually, or what did that look like?
I would say it happened gradually over the course of those first few years of Veronica's life, as me evolving into a father that I knew I could be, versus and shedding that old version of me that worked then. Got me my wife, right? I convinced her to marry me. I was charming enough, but it didn't work for the future, and I had to figure that out on my own. My wife is such a blessing, but then there's also a part of her that just allows me to be, which is great, especially when I left corporate. She always full love and support. Even if I'm driving down a cliff, she supports to a fault where I don't know if she would have recognized it before I did. I had to recognize it, and it was enough me yelling when she was a baby, when she was a toddler. I prevented myself from, the old me would put a fist in the wall when I'm upset. Yeah. That I started to recognize I need to manage my anger. And it's funny because anyone like you who knows me now, it's like, what are you talking about? It's so weird but there was a version of me that was that. Yeah. I was angry because I had really, I didn't know at the time. I had no purpose. I had nothing fulfilling my life. I had accomplished what I set out to accomplish as a childhood dream, to live and work in Manhattan and be a creative director and all that. So what else was there, dude? Like, what's next? There was nothing on the script for me. And I had to figure out what's the next. Oh, okay, that's script. Let's go put that on the shelf. That's over. What's the next version? I didn't have people like that in my life to tell me there's another version of you that you need to go create. And it wasn't until fatherhood where I had to see that. And Tony Robbins was a big part of that, like hearing him on YouTube and listening to him, and recognizing all the junk that I had to kind of put to bed and work on, because it's work, bro, right? Looking in the mirror, it's work every day. Yeah.
That's so, I mean, I really appreciate you sharing that, because I can relate to that. I know a lot of people out there can relate to that. I mean, what you're telling right now is my story. I mean, it's just hearing that, other people, had that issue with just being angry and like having that outburst. And, I abused alcohol myself, and it was, definitely self-destructive. It was that like weird, like I just felt stuck. So you felt stuck, and so Tony Robbins, the idea of fatherhood, what is it about, how are you able to kind of knock yourself out of that other people might not be able to do that other people may be like feeling like they're just stuck indefinitely?
Yeah. Well, every one of us could feel stuck at any given point in life. It's number one, recognizing you're stuck, right? Because some people don't even know they're in a ditch. They don't even realize they're in it until someone comes along, looks down and says, dude, you've been in there for a long time. And then you go, really? And then you look down and you're fat and you're mess. And, the days are compounding where you're having bad days. Sometimes I think there's a point where they're like, it's just once in a while, but now it's like your life. And it was really, dude, I didn't understand. Like I had to form new habits. I had to understand how habits were formed. It was really just like deconstructing and jumping into the personal development world. Like I didn't know anything. I grew up from, a family where getting counseling, therapy, that all means you're broken. There's something wrong with you. And accepting the fact that nothing's wrong with me. I just came up from I had trauma in my life that I need to address, and I need to recognize it, that was what it was. It was trauma. It didn't serve me, but I'll use it to serve me now and learn from it and develop. And the failure thing was big, right? Like that was a reprogram that was just embedded in me. And I had to literally go to sleep listening to stuff off YouTube. I got YouTube Premium so that I could listen to stuff while my phone was off. That was the first thing. That was the first tool. And every night I'd go to sleep listening to something to reprogram my mind. And then I would wake up with something motivational. And it seemed cheesy to anyone who knew me at the time. Like, oh, you're a Tony Robbins freak and growth, blah, blah. But I was like, that's what I needed. I needed to hear it over and over and over and over. And over time, it worked. Reprogramming myself, literally programming.
Yeah. Was that all internally motivated, or did you have someone like kind of shared the mirror or turned the mirror on you and just said, you need to change?
It was internal. I recognized that in order for me to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, first, the goal was money, and the money was to serve the family, like legacy wealth, right? That was the excuse at the time. And then eventually I realized, no, I need to work on me. I need to put the oxygen mask on me before I can serve anyone else around me, my wife, my kids, my family, my clients. As I started to grow and my clients were benefiting from what I was doing and I was serving them, I would look back and go, I don't think we're happy here as a family. I'm putting all the work into my clients. And then I was like, oh, how does this work? Let me start here. And when I say here, for those who are listening, I'm pointing to my chest, like me, and then I could help my wife, and then I could help my kids. And then it's just a ripple effect. And that's my everyday now, bro. Like working on me first, and then my family, and then you, and then it grows. But until I understood that concept, that wasn't until later. That wasn't until somewhat recently, honestly.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. And how are you now? Like, are you feeling like you're in a good spot? Are you still working on some of that? Or
I'm a flow, bro.
Yeah,
Talking about flow, because
good deal.
The thing is, and I listened to one of your recent episodes where it's like putting that expectation on yourself to be in flow all the time is you said this, you're setting yourself up for failure, and that it's not sustainable. And when you were saying this on your show, I was thinking about think about Arnold Schwarzenegger, who would work and work and work so that he could be on stage and then do that, those funny poses and suck his gut in looking all weird. That's in flow. Like, let's in a visual sort of perspective, that's flow, right? Imagine flexing like that all the time, performing all the time. Like, you're gonna burn out, man. Like, that is not sustainable. And when I'm in flow, here's the thing: I know how to get myself into flow and what I need to be in flow, and I set myself up to be in flow. It doesn't happen 100% of the time, but it happens most of the time. And it's we can get into it, but it's based in habit and forming new habits.
Yeah, I'd love to get into that, because I think you're touching on something really key here. I mean, one of the messages we hear a lot in our society, I think because it's sexy, is just like, oh yeah, go big or go home, stay hard, do all this, just do everything else all at once. But I feel the same way. I feel that that's not sustainable. I've been burned on that before, and burned out and frustrated, and then feeling stuck and going back into old habits. So how would you define flow, or how does that work for you in terms of,
it's, for me, and I said a lot of this is recent in terms of growth, the next level of growth for me, because when I had to move away from money being my motivation, I had to realize I'm not taking that with me. And it wasn't until I had opportunity, and we could talk about this now or later, that I was speaking at a GoBundance event in Miami. And there was one thing on my shoulder going, "You're the best, Erik. You're awesome." And then the other side saying, "There's something bigger here than just you." And that bigger to me was God and faith. And I had to go back to that root, which I lost sight of during my 20s, 30s, 40s, and living in sin and being a madman. And that didn't serve me over time. But then it was that helped me. But then it was also creating the habits of, first, I was like, oh, I'm kind of worshiping Tony Robbins, right? I'm listening to him morning, noon, and night. And he got me there.
Right.
Now it's just I replaced it with God, right? I've replaced that. So, but the thing is that also gave me a bigger picture for what I'm doing, and finding folks like you who I align with. And I know you're doing bigger things. And then that one little ripple becomes another ripple. And then, like, if I can create basically more of what I want to do, and what Jesus, like all of this stuff, like that, to me, I can get up for every morning. That I will form a freaking habit for.
Yeah.
Just big.
Yeah. And is that a pretty recent,
yes.
You mentioned in Miami, so you started getting back into more of spiritual nature.
Because, dude, everything we say, the go-giver, give without any expectation of receiving. I was living that life already. And yes, it works. 100%. Anyone who's listening, if you ever doubt that doesn't work for you, keep doing it over and over and over and over, and give and give and give and give with no expectation of receiving. That's from scripture, bro. So, like, all the Jim Rohn, all the Tony Robbins, all of these guys, it's coming from a place. So I was like, let me just go to the root. Let me go to where these guys are pulling it from. They're not mentioning God. They're saying the universe. And I'm like, oh, I'll just go to the original stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that's the jam right there. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're working towards. All of us, whether we realize it or not. It's all converging to one place.
I love that, and I'm glad you say it. I'm glad you're saying that. I'm glad you have the courage to bring that up, because I feel the same way. We talk a lot about the universe and all this kind of stuff, and we're kind of just circling around the same thing. We're afraid to say the G word, right? We're afraid to say God or Jesus or these kinds of things. And
I was one of those. Definitely.
It's just. Yeah, me too. I mean, even now, it kind of feels it's still that, like, instinctive, like, it's uncomfortable. I don't want to alienate people or anything like that. But then again, I mean, there's a reason why it's uncomfortable, and it is because it works, but it's hard. And I don't know if that's what you found, but it's not the easy path, but it's the worthwhile path.
Yeah, because the thing is, I think it's, again, playing it safe, like I did in corporate. playing it safe because what is the number one thing that we're mostly concerned with is belonging, right? Comes from, and then everyone in this space knows this story, that comes from our instinct to survive and not be kicked out of the village. Because that means 100% death if you're out there on your own.
Right.
So the thing is, I think that we have that inherently in us. So if we have a strong belief, whether you're on the right or you're on the left, you're center right, center left, people don't want to speak because they're worried about telling their truth, because they're worried about what people think, because then they're worried about scarcity and losing clients, losing followers, whatever it is. Likes, hearts, and farts is what I say. Who cares? Put out your truth and you'll start to attract more of you and what you can do and what you want. So I've recently realized that my faith and that path for me, I'm all in. Like, I'm no longer going to hide and say the universe. No more. Like, this is what it's about. This is my truth. This is the truth. And whether you like it or not, that's cool, right? But we're all working towards, and it's going to sound cheesy and fluffy. And to those who are like, just give me the ROI. They tuned out of this already. I'm sorry, Adam.
Right.
But those that I'm speaking to understand that the true conversion of all of this and everything that we're doing and all of this, we're not taking this money home with us. We're not bringing it to the afterlife. It's all about love, bro. It's love, love, love. And if you love on people, you will receive that love tenfold. And that's all I'm here to do, man. That's the mission.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Flow Over Fear. If you are liking this show, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be first to know when I drop a new episode, including interviews or trainings or dad jokes. That's right, dad jokes. Add a little levity to your life. And if you liked this episode in particular and you think somebody can get something from it, please share it with a friend. And that way we'll spread the message together. Thanks again for joining me today. We'll see you next time. Amen. That's great. Well said. I mean, that's a mic drop moment. And I think that I know that people that are actively pushing away the concept of God are, probably tuning out for sure. But I know that there's a lot of people that are questioning God and, and curious about that, and maybe not even curious, but just like trying to reconcile why bad things happen when there's a loving God, or how if we're leaning into love, bad things still happen. Right. But, I guess what does your faith look like now? Like, how are you practicing? What are some of the things you're doing to build on that aspect?
Like I said, so I'm a newbie at this, right? It's been about a year. Right. I've been dabbling in it and not realizing everything I was saying was basically like scripture. And I would always play safe and say the universe, God, or whoever you worship. And I don't judge anyone. Like, we went to a Hindu temple that's right in my town in Robbinsville, New Jersey, the biggest one in the world, I found out. And it was beautiful. Oh, wow. And I felt the energy and I appreciated what they built in their gods. It was beautiful. So I don't judge anyone else's faith or beliefs. But to me, it's all the same thing. Like, we're all talking about the same thing. Then the thing is, what I did was I basically took the habits that I've built of reprogramming myself with personal development and growth with Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, whoever else, and replace it with prayer. And then I took the stuff that I was doing in yoga and meditation, still doing yoga and meditation, but incorporating prayer into that. More specifically speaking to God, speaking to Jesus, and forming that relationship. I didn't even think that was a thing. Like, you could build a relationship with something that's not physically here. But what has happened is now I recognize through replacing those habits with habits that were already formed with something else. Like, I haven't read a business book, which I was ravenous for business books. I read the Bible. So until I can get to the point where I feel confident and comfortable, where I can kind of pull from it, because I from one of my understandings is God communicates to us through scripture. Like, so one of the very early messages that I got, he literally dropped like 1 Corinthians 13 in my mind. And I was like, what is that? And I went and read, I was like, it's all about love. This is 100% to me. And I'm saying not for everyone, but for me, that made sense. I was like, wow, I don't read the Bible. How would that have shown up in my mind? Right. And my wife still is kind of like, really? I think you're a little nuts. I'm sure she wouldn't say that out loud, but that's the look she gave me when I told her. I'm like, I got a scripture in my head. I don't know what that means. And I went and read it, and it was about literally what we're talking about here. So it's things like that where it's undeniable to me. There's so many things where we brush it off, bro, as coincidence. That's divine intervention. 100%.
Oh, wow.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, oh, wow, what a coincidence that happened. Or that car just grazed me. We would have been dead. That's happened to me. Like, I'm blessed. People say it and then they forget it. And like, I'm moving on with my life. Oh, I'm blessed. Or people only turn to God when, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to turn this to a big, altar church.
No, this is great.
But it's like, people just don't recognize it because it's not the thing, the PC thing or whatever it is. Oh, I forgot my computer does it. But it's like, there you go. It's a message. It truly is that. Like, we brush it off as coincidences, deja vu, whatever, all these weird things, superstition, and bad things too could happen, as a result of just you put bad energy. I'm all about frequencies too. Like, if you're putting bad vibes out there, that's what you bring. That's what you attract. You're a musician, right? It's all about vibrations. And if you can come in harmony with someone else that brings in a violin, a cello, a horn, that's in sync with your music, your vibration, then wonderful things occur, right? It's music. It's a symphony versus if somebody stepped into you while you were playing the cello, bro, and they were like all out of tune with like an electric guitar or, some weird xylophone, whatever it was. And they were just like, yo, your vibe sucks. And we feel that when we're in the room with others. I'm a big believer in that.
Yeah, that's I agree with that. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about that lately too, which in and of itself is a big coincidence, right? The fact that we're both thinking through coincidences,
That's wild. Yeah, it's so meta.
So
right?
It's it is. And so I mean, I look at that and I'm thinking about all that you're saying with regard to like this idea of like, quote unquote, drinking the Kool-Aid with the church stuff and the God stuff and all that kind of stuff. I mean, but you think about those other areas in life where we've transformed our lives, like going into GoBundance or going into listening to Tony Robbins. I mean, the same reaction happens. It's almost like this idea of transforming from the norm is somehow taboo enough for us to, be like, feel like we're going to be ostracized or so there's a scariness around it. But when we adopt it, and I don't know if, tell me if this is your experience, but when we adopt it, it's just like this whole new world opens up and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's amazing, whether it be Tony Robbins and, ultimately leveling up from that in God,
Yes.
Is that kind of how you feel about that?
100%. I think that eventually you'll get there on your deathbed if you don't accept it sooner, right? Because that's what people are often like, oh, Lord, help me, please, because they're dying. The car just fell off a bridge and it's sinking, right? And then now you find your faith,
right.
I hear so many near-death experience stories where someone literally, like atheists, they'll die and, they're clinically dead. And they'll see God, they'll see Jesus, whatever it is. And there's, and typically the experience is always 100% the same. It's like, I love you, bro. Like, I love you. You still have work to do. Go back. And they're no longer atheists. They're like, I saw it. It's real. So how can somebody who didn't believe in any higher power now die clinically and then come back and go, I saw it. I'm here to, I'm here to teach. I'm here to preach. It's real. So you're absolutely right. I feel like it's always just a human journey because we all, whether you want to put a tinfoil hat on and say it's all by design, like whatever it is, but we have this mindset, this vibration that's put out there on the radio waves, whatever it is, where we're stuck in this. For me, it was a corporate mindset, whatever it was, going to school, and getting pummeled with this mindset, this belief system. Like you're a worker bee, produce for the big guys. Like all that stuff I felt like is normal. But then when you break out, like you said, into a GoBundance, into a Tony Robbins, into Dispenza, whoever it is, you start to kind of, it's the pill, right? You took took the red pill and you realize, oh, wait a minute, I was in the Matrix.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
It really, it does. And that's why I'm inspired by your story because it is like more of a gradual and self-inspired one. Like, a lot of like for me, for others that were like kind of had a rock bottom, it was, we had to have a horrible experience. And I mean, or some kind of rock bottom, or somebody to say like, we're going to leave you if this happens again, kind of thing, to kind of spark that thing. But it was all of this transformation is going to be internal. Like, it has to be you that does it. You have to be willing. And you've gone through so many different transformations. I'm excited to see like where that evolves you, because, it's just like this rapid transformation kind of thing that's just opened you up to this amazing freedom. So with regard to your, I want to talk about your podcast too.
Yeah.
Because your podcast is awesome. The Entrepreneur Circle. So you're like 250 episodes into that, right? Like, or almost 300, something like that.
So you'll relate to this to a degree. 300 episodes we're at 299.
Wow.
I've been paused. We actually missed a week, which hasn't happened in ages, because I want to do something special. And I just haven't put aside the time to make a compilation, which is what I'm trying to do, is like a compilation. I was going to do 3 guests that I can highlight, like Hal Elrod, Amanda Holmes, like some big names that we had some really good conversations. I don't want to like do a compilation. And then from there, dude, honestly, I think that if anything, it's going to potentially continue, but in a different format, and maybe even a different name to align with the new mission, because that mission served for 5-6 years to have conversations with people that I want to have conversations with. But I think now the conversation is going to change a bit. So stay tuned. Entrepreneur Circle, I love it. It's been a blessing to run it for this long. Maybe it still exists in its current form, but less frequent, and then we can do the other thing. But yeah, I want to ensure, like, as we grow as entrepreneurs and business owners, we're evolving constantly. Hopefully you're growing.
Sure.
So you don't necessarily have to commit to the thing that you built. You can create something else as a result of who you are now. And you can maybe figure out a way to transition it. That's what I'm sort of in that weird cocoon phase. Or just put it to bed. There's nothing wrong with that. And starting something fresh and new that's aligned with your current self, your current goals.
Nice. So when you're saying you're evolving, can you give us any insight into what that looks like? Are you still in the early stages? Or
I'll say 2 tenets for sure are personal branding and finding people who have a brand. So I already did 12 episodes of this, aligned with my book coming out called Be Your Brand. And the podcast most likely will called Be Your Brand as well. It's funny because the evolution of this has all changed because I've had to let the ego die in order to become a man of faith. And at the same time, personal branding feels very egocentric. So it's like, that's where I think I can bring something to the conversation that's going to be interesting and somewhat unique. Is like, how do you create a personal brand, but still be a servant for those around you, your family, and God? But I've interviewed Kevin Harrington, who was one of the original Sharks. Like, somehow he landed in my lap.
Yeah.
Turned on my camera, and there he was. I'm like, blessing, right? First episode.
Right.
I never released it, but there's certain things that I think that from there will actually influence the book. So there's where it's like kind of weird. But then the second tenet is as I mentioned, over the past 15 minutes is being clear that I am a man of faith, that I'm a Christian, and that finding others like me, not necessarily of Christian faith, but helpful, but someone who has a mission, bro. Like, I can't serve people like I used to who aren't clear on their mission, their purpose, and something bigger than themselves, something bigger than just making money. It's way bigger. And like, let's jam, man. I'm picking up my guitar. You pick up your cello. Let's jam. That's what I'm all about.
Love it.
Like, let's make something beautiful together, because we're aligned there.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm excited to hear that you have a book coming out. Is that I'm thrilled about.
Thank you.
I love to kind of maybe dig a little deeper on the idea of like the balance between the ego and the personal brand, because I struggle with that. And I think where I find the balance was self-deprecation. I mean, I just beat myself up with humor all the time. But
I love it.
Right.
I love it.
but like how what is that balance? How do we balance that out, and how important is it to have a personal brand?
It's absolutely, from my perspective, critical to have a personal brand. Because if you don't create and develop the personal brand with intention, someone else will. Your reputation's out there, because your personal brand is your reputation. It's your online reputation. So if you don't do it, Google will do it for you. So why not put out who you are with the intention of people understanding who you are? And I'm not saying this is where I say yielding that power and not doing the right thing. That's why I don't want to work with people who don't have clarity on this. Is their core values? What are the systems and beliefs that what are their tenets? What is the moral compass for you? And if I have a conversation with people, they don't realize, oh, I'm vetting Erik to see if I'm going to work with him. No, it's the other way around too, bro. Like, I'm trying to see where you're at morally.
Yeah.
And if I don't align with that, then that's okay. I'm not judging you, but I don't think I can really or want to really help, because we're on a bigger mission. And are you a part of that? I want to be a part of yours. Do you want to be a part of mine? That's what it's about. So then, like, building towards that is going to take a little time, but then also a lot of, I say a lot of courage to put it out there. But I think they'll come, and I think it will develop. And I'm forgetting the original question that you asked me.
Oh yeah.
Balance.
No, yes. Yeah. How do you balance out that ego versus the brand?
It's recognizing when your ego's talking. I highly recommend, there's a recent episode on Ed Milet's podcast where he talks about ego. And I can't put it the way he did. I'd have to memorize. It's one of those 25-minute episodes that he does solo casting. Highly recommend. Go check out Ed Milet's, where he talks about the death of the ego and recognizing ego. And ego is really coming from that little person inside you that fights for attention, or fights because somebody insulted you, or somebody said or did something that you didn't expect them to, and therefore it hurt you, and now you have to fight for it. Whether it's comments through Facebook or an argument with your family, it's always your ego in play, defending that insecure version, that insecurity in you. And I love this quote, dude, from Mike Tyson. He was like, man, I used to be, what a wonderful journey there, dude. That guy has come from
for sure,
really dark, crazy places that we've kind of discussed on your podcast here and when you were on mine, to the journey of this sage. Like, who would ever thought that Mike Tyson that bit off Evander Holyfield's ear is now this old sage, wise guy? And he said that he still struggles today. And when somebody says something online or wherever, media, bad about him, he gets angry. And he goes, but what I have to recognize is I'm only angry when I think I'm somebody. And how do I fix that? He goes, I remind myself that I'm nobody. I'm a nobody.
Wow.
And that's where faith comes into play for me, dude, because I'm like, I'm a nobody in the grand scheme of things. I'm here for this mission. I'm here for a bigger mission. And ultimately there's something bigger than me that I'm serving. And that puts things in perspective. That puts my ego in check. My ego's like, shut up, stuff it down, because you were nothing. You were nothing. Then there's a lot more to this than you.
Wow. I'm only angry when I think I'm somebody. That's just so amazing. That's just powerful. You can always do it. It's strange now. If we went back to travel back in time to 1994 and said, hey, we're going to look up to Mike Tyson one day. And his words of wisdom,
this guy was a maniac.
I would be like, what are you talking about?
He was the opposite of anyone you should look up to. He was the worst. And he got some bad cards dealt to him for sure. And any one of us who walked down that path and experienced his life would, we would have done the same things. But he's got some. The other quote that I always pull from him is, everyone thinks they have a plan until they get punched in the face. I love that one.
Oh yeah, one of my faves.
So good.
Yeah, he's such a perfect example of somebody who is truly transformed in such a positive and spiritual way. Yeah. Amazing. And so you're a family man. You have just one daughter. How many kids do you have?
I have two, 9 and 6. Yeah,
2 kids. 9 and
blessing,
6.
man. I thought that I would be raising a boy or boys as well, but man, everybody's like, man,
Yeah.
perfect. Like you're such a perfect girl dad or whatever they call us. I guess because I embrace my feminine side. I don't know what that means. But yeah, I am setting a really high bar, bro, for anybody who comes to the front door here. Can I take Veronica out? I'm like, yeah, it's going to be really hard to match if I am that avatar for them. Right. I'm trying to make sure that example that I am setting in their life will inform the best life partner or husband for them and father, to their children. So that's my goal.
That's huge. So I don't want to gloss over that because that's so important. So your goal with your kids, or with your daughters, to set the example for what you want their future partner to be.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that that's success as fatherhood?
Yeah. That's part of it, right? It's also being the best husband I could be, so they could see how my wife and I in our relationship and how healthy that is. It's not perfect by no means, but we never. One of the main reasons I married my wife is we never argued, dude. It was weird. We were dating and I never had an argument.
Really?
And a version of me would have been like, it's too weird. Let's break up. It's too perfect. Something's wrong here. But that has stayed. We just celebrated our 15th anniversary. We've known each other for 19 years. Time just flew by. And I could count on two hands how many arguments we've had. We've had one gigantic one. But can you imagine, dude? Like less than a dozen arguments over the years. Whereas, I was on a dating scene for a while, man. It was normal to have arguments. Like every,
oh sure,
shouting matches. Yeah,
yeah. Are you ever? Yeah, I mean that's something many people aspire to. I mean, I think it's. You should consider doing relationship advice. Maybe that's your next podcast. I think as you and your wife get on there. Yeah, teach some of that
so
stuff
humble,
for sure.
I try to follow, but it's funny you say that because she would never ever think of herself as that. And I'm like, you've got some wisdom in you, but she doesn't feel this level of comfort talking to the masses, or at least your mom.
Sure.
It's like, who's doing this. But it's interesting. Yeah. And I think it's just really, we lucked out in terms of her personality and my personality. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, Erik, I mean, it's really inspiring. I mean, I started this episode saying that how inspiring your journey has been and how inspiring it is to just be a part of your circle in terms of, being able to be a client of yours and just, kind of ride the coattails of your success by being somebody that's doing that kind of stuff and learn from you, and just seeing the spiritual growth that you've seen and the way that you've leveled up your life. I thank you for sharing vulnerably here. I know that there's a lot of people that may be struggling with a lot of what you've been going through and will get help from that because we're not alone. We're all working through it. And we all have the ability to have this amazing transformation. And you're an example of that, Erik. So thanks for sharing all that.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to your community. One thing I want to share that anyone who's listening to this, one last story, in that I was driving and I started getting a phone. No, I wasn't driving. I just dropped my car off at the auto body shop, and someone called me who pulled over, and I picked up. And he's like, hey, I'm pulled over on the side of the road. I just heard your episode where you talked about folding one of your companies, and I want to thank you for that. And I was like, why? We spoke for an hour, and it was a fan and a follower, and I knew him because we connected on LinkedIn, and I gave him my phone number and we chatted once. But then he called me and said he didn't sound like he was in a good state, bro. And he was crying, and he said, thank you so much for letting me know I'm not alone. And I want to encourage anybody who's listening to your show. You're doing God's work as well. And I recognize it, and I want to honor that. And I want to say to your audience, if you have ever felt that Adam has helped you in any way, please reach out. Don't be a silent majority of people that don't say anything. Adam wants to hear from you. We want to hear from you. We want to know the impact. We want to help in any way that we can. So I just wanted to share that with your community, that if you are helping them, or if there was any moment that you made them laugh or feel inspired, they should reach out to you and let you know that.
Yeah, 100%. I appreciate that, Eric, and do take him up on that. Do take us up on that, because we do. We want to help. We've been through it. We know how lonely it feels. We know how hopeless it feels, and we just want to share that there is hope beyond the hopelessness. We know that from our experiences, and there's always hope. Thank you, Eric. And I know people can find you at ericcabral.co. And where else do you want to find
exact URL? But I want to give to your audience something that they could take away, and potentially, if they wanted to become a good podcaster or podcast guest, I put together a compilation of advice over the years that I've collected. So same URL, Erik with a K, ERIK, cabral.co/guide. And then you could download a PDF
/guide.
There. Yeah. And actually, my most valuable commodity to me is my time. And there's actually a link there if you wanted to book some time to chat and, help, brainstorm, figure some stuff out together.
Awesome. Thank you for that generous offer to download. I really encourage everybody to do that, especially if you're looking. I know I've talked with a few people that are listening right now that are talking about starting a podcast. Reach out to Erik, because he is an expert. He does the heavy lifting. And really it is just a remarkable way for, two people to sharpen each other, two groups to sharpen each other, where you will bring out your best by working with Erik. So reach out to him and On Air Brands. Look out for his new book, which sounds like it's going to be called Be Your Brand.
For now, working time.
And definitely going to be an awesome book. And before I let you go, I have to ask you: is there any ways in which I'm a dad, you're a dad? Are there any ways in which you're embarrassing your kids in a good way, which you would encourage us to?
I've recognized that it was always cool, and still when we're alone as a family in the house, to just sweep my girls off their feet. Literally, like Veronica is probably 4'2", 3 now. And I could just literally pick her up. And I always say to her and to Natalie, who's younger, when I sweep them up, I always say, I'm going to pick you up on your wedding day. Like, I don't know, really, Dad? But you might be 80 years old. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to ensure that is my goal, that I stay in shape to the degree where I could still lift you up like this. And I noticed they don't like that in public, bro. So I try to do it in public in front of their friends. And they, for some reason, this 40-pound kid can make herself feel 120 pounds. Like she just sinks in. Like, I don't know how they get heavier. They know how to do it. But yeah, I wish I had a pun for you, but yeah, something about sweeping you off. You're the expert. You come up with one for me, sweeping them off their feet. But yeah, that embarrasses the heck out of them when I lift them up in front of their friends.
That's awesome. And they're going to love it when you do that to them at their wedding day. I know it. And sweeping them off their feet, that is still, I think that's a great pun for it too, because you will be sweeping them off their feet until you're 80. So that's awesome, Erik. Thanks for sharing, man.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here. And thank you all for listening. And reach out to Erik if you want to get any advice on the podcasting or learn about personal branding, that kind of thing. Get the free guide at ericcabral.co.guide or /guide. And Erik, thanks for joining me here. We'll see everybody next time. Thank you so much for joining me today on Flow Over Fear. If you are liking this show, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be first to know when I drop a new episode, including interviews or trainings or dad jokes. That's right, dad jokes. Add a little levity to your life. And if you liked this episode in particular, and you think somebody can get something from it, please share it with a friend. And that way we'll spread the message together. Thanks again for joining me today. See you next time.